Welcome back to the Nerdy Grail, and once again, Happy New Year. 2025 has officially begun. I cannot believe it. Another year for new memories, and new memories in terms of Doctor Who as well. Another year of Doctor Who. Doctor Who's been going on for over 61 years now, and that is unbelievable, and hopefully it will still go strong. I am looking forward to Season 2 and seeing what it has to offer, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens when we get there. But in today's video, this is a part one of a two-part video because I'm going to do both a classic series version of this, which is today's video, and a modern New Who version of this, which will be in a future video. So what am I talking about? Well, I thought because of the release of Doctor Who, The Collection, Season 7 coming out within the next couple of months, it's made me want to go back and rewatch a lot more classic Doctor Who. I am more of a classic Doctor Who fan than a modern Who fan. I do prefer the classic series over the modern era. I'm even rocking out a Colin Baker 6th Doctor shirt. I do have a Tom Baker variant at the moment as well, because Tom Baker is my favourite Doctor. So I thought, why not? Because I haven't really done this properly for a very, very long time, and my opinions have changed a little bit over the years. Why not do a complete ranking of every single classic Doctor Who season, from season 1 starting in 1963 with William Hartnell, all the way up and including sort of the Wilderness Years era, but obviously finishing with Paul McGann in the TV movie from 1996. So this is going to be the classic series in this video, but I am going to do a part 2 to this video where I will then rank the modern era with Christopher Eccleston all the way to Ncuti Gatwa. So sit back, grab your sonic screwdrivers, grab a bag of jelly babies. I've also got a cup of tea because it's going to be a slightly longer video. And join me for ranking all of the classic series from start to finish, 1963 to 1996. Right, okay, it's time to now start this list. So we're ranking the classic Doctor Who seasons. We've got them all down the bottom here, all the way from William Hartnell in 1963 with season 1, all the way to, like I said, I have included the Wilderness Years, or the Paul McGann TV movie, realistically, is what I'm ranking it as here. So Paul McGann gets a little bit of an individual story ranking. So it's going to be a long one. That's why I've had to get a cup of tea for this. And this is going to be my current, as of January 1st, 2025, views on classic Doctor Who. My opinions have changed loads over the years, you know, especially on certain Doctors. Like, I've been given a lot more respect for certain Doctors than I used to have. So this is going to be really interesting. And I am thinking of them almost as a whole, really. So I'm not just thinking like, oh, my favourite story is in that season, so that season's going to be amazing. I am going to consider what stories are also in that season as well, and then doing it as an overall average. And you got to keep in mind as well, this is my personal opinion as well. So your list will probably vary quite differently to mine. Okay, so let's start, obviously, with William Hartnell in 1963 with season 1. I would say overall, season 1, I would put in B tier. Because it's a fairly decent start to Doctor Who. You've got some fairly good stories. Like the Daleks is a really good story. We obviously had the Daleks in colour come out, now that we're in 2025, over a year ago now. Which, I wasn't a big fan of the Daleks in colour. I prefer the original. A little bit long, the original, but you know, that's what was expected back then, really. A lot of the early Hartnell stories were like 6-7 part stories, especially in season 1. But it was a good story. Edge of Destruction was a fantastic 2-parter. The Aztecs is an amazing historical story. The Doctor accidentally getting himself engaged, that was hilarious. The Sensorites is okay. It's a little bit of a drag. It's one of those Hartnell stories that drags. But I do like the Sensorites. I think they are a cool design as well for the 60s. An Earthly Child, obviously, part 1 is spectacular. Does drag then from parts 2 to 4, but part 1 is amazing. The only story in this season I'm not a fan of is The Reign of Terror. Because I have got Marco Polo on vinyl, which I loved listening to that on vinyl. That was amazing, Marco Polo. Please, can we find Marco Polo? But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Reign of Terror. It's not my favourite, if I'm honest. Not my favourite historical. And then you got the Keys of Marinus. I sort of like these style of adventures where the Doctor and co will go off and go. Each part will be something different. So like in the Keys of Marinus, one of the parts is in a jungle, one is in like this snowy mountainscape. You've got like this heist, this in a city. There's lots that goes on in it. It's interesting, but I don't know. It drags towards the end. But yeah, overall, I've a fairly decent start to Doctor Who, so I can't complain too much about season 1. And hopefully one day we'll get it on the collection range. Season 2. Now, season 2 is an A tier for me personally. It is my favourite of the Hartnell seasons. I think William Hartnell does a fantastic job. He's starting to grow now. And this is the first one where you see departures of companions, like in the Dalek Invasion of Earth, you lose Susan. And in The Chase, you lose Barbara and Ian. You also gain Vicky in the story The Rescue, which is a fun two-parter. And you then also gain Stephen at the end of The Chase. But then he's fully realised he's on the TARDIS in The Time Meddler. But this season's just chock full of great stories. The Romans is fantastic. Dark Invasion of Earth, spectacular. Time Meddler, I fully enjoy. The Chase is really good as well, fun, especially the Daleks on a pirate ship getting knocked off. The Daleks getting thrown around by Frankenstein and Dracula. I think it's hilarious. There is a couple of duds in this season, like the Web Planet. I'm not a fan at all of the Web Planet. And Planet of the Giants, I'm not a huge fan of that one either, to be honest. But like I said, and Space Museum is okay, but the good stories in this season are good, and that's why it's high. Season 3 is a different one because a lot of Season 3 is missing still. But we are getting the Savages on animation, so that's going to be amazing. I can't wait for that. Stephen's last official story. So I'm going to judge this based on the stories that we've actually got. So that's Galaxy 4, The Ark, the Celestial Toymaker, the Gunfighters, and the War Machines. So I'm going to base it on that. And on that premise, for me, I'm going to put it as C tier. Because I adore the War Machines. It's my favourite William Hartnell story of all time. It's fantastic. The Ark is not a good story for me. I used to love it. I now can't stand it. It's a story of 2 parts, really. Parts 1 and 2 is one adventure. Parts 3 and 4 is another adventure, but in the same location. Celestial Toymaker, the animation was really interesting, and I did enjoy it. But it's not one that I've rushed to rewatch. The Gunfighters, I like the singing. The singing's quite... it's because it's something different. And the Wild West theme is cool, but the story drags. Galaxy 4, I also was not a fan of Galaxy 4, so that lets it down a bit as well. And then obviously, like I said, the rest of the season is missing, so it's kind of unfortunate, but we will get it one day. One day we'll get it. Now we're moving into Patrick Troughton, but we do have the last 2 William Hartnell stories in this season as well. One of those being The Smugglers, which is still missing. Patrick Troughton's first season, for me, is the exact same as season 3. It's very hit or miss, and with a few things still missing, like The Smugglers and The Highlanders, it's still not high. I love The 10th Planet, love William Hartnell's final story. I think it's really, really good. Power of the Daleks is a lot of fun. Evil of the Daleks is fantastic, and the Moonbase is spectacular. But then you've got a lot of duds. I'm not a fan of the Macra Terror, not a fan of the Faceless Ones, not a fan at all of the Underwater Menace, even the animation that we got of it. So those things really drag it down. Not enough to be in the bad tiers, but just to be like average overall. And Ben and Polly are not my favourite companions, if I'm perfectly honest. They're the only weak point for me of the War Machines, but it's whatever. Season 5 of Patrick Troughton, he starts to get a lot more in his stride. I would say I feel the same with this one as I do for Season 1. This is probably Patrick Troughton's in the middle season for me. There's a couple of really interesting stories in here, like The Tomb of the Cybermen is a classic. I adore The Tomb of the Cybermen. And The Enemy of the World is fantastic. We also have The Web of Fear, which introduces the Brigadier, which is amazing. Colonel Lethbridge Stewart. I love it, love it, love it. And then The Ice Warriors. I like The Ice Warriors. They're my favourite Doctor Who villains as well, so that's really good. Couple of duds in this season though as well. Fury from the Deep, I'm not a fan of that one. That's Victoria's final story. She has a really good departure, but I'm not a fan of it. And the wheel in space is still partly missing, but those Cybermen, both design and voices, ooh, very bad. At least in my opinion, anyway. They're not the best. But yeah, it's sort of in the middle for me. And you got The Abominable Snowmen, which is an alright story, does drag at times. However, Season 6. Season 6 is a banger of a season, and is actually my first candidate for an S tier season. I adore Patrick Troughton's final season. Almost every story in here is a banger for me. Recently, with my fiance, we rewatched The Dominators. She quite liked it. I loved rewatching it. I loved it more than I used to. The Quarks are just funny. You got The Mind Robber. Best Patrick Troughton story, hands down. Fantastic from start to finish. The Invasion. I liked it a little bit less than I used to, but I still really enjoy The Invasion. Great story. The Crotons is okay. It's not the best, but Seeds of Death is the best Ice Warrior story, hands down. Like, no competition. Space Pirates is still missing. That would be a dud if it was existing, though, because I've heard everyone through the audios and everything. No one really bigs up the Space Pirates, so. And then you got the War Games, which I adore the War Games. It's a little bit long, yes, I will agree, but I still love it. And obviously we just had the colorization of the War Games as well, so that was really, really interesting to see. And it was better than the colorization for the Daleks. Still a bit hit or miss on this whole War Chief being the master thing. And the New Regeneration I do really, really like, to be fair. But yeah, the War Chief being the master is sort of a bit hit or miss for me. But yeah, overall, Season 6 is spectacular. Moving then into Jon Pertwee's era, Season 7, which is coming out soon on the collection range. I would say Season 7, for me, this might be a bit controversial for some people, is about average. And this is, you know, no offence to the actress or anything at all. I'm really not a fan of Liz Shaw as a companion. You know, she's too much of... And there's another companion like this later. She's too much of the Doctor's equal. We're supposed to be able to, like, connect with the companions, and I don't feel like we can connect to Liz very well. She's a bit too full of herself. She thinks she's better than everyone at times. And in the Ambassadors of Death, which I hate that story, by the way. I'm not a fan of Ambassadors of Death. She gets captured, and for about 2 or 3 episodes constantly, she's just back and forth getting captured. Back and forth, back and forth. It's embarrassing. But yeah, so I'm not a fan of that. However, this does have some classic stories like Spearhead from Space and Inferno. Both are amazing, which is why it gets B tier on this list for me. But Doctor and the Silurians is okay. That's probably about a C tier story. But the Ambassadors of Death for me would probably be about D or E tier, because I really don't like that story. Then we've got the Master season of Season 8 with Jon Pertwee, which is better. And I do like it. I've rewatched a lot of those stories more, especially with my fiancée, because she hadn't seen a few of them. So like Terror of the Autons, fantastic story with the Autons, and the Master's first story as well, unless you want to now count the War Games, which, yeah, that's weird now. Mind of Evil is brilliant. Claws of Axos, controversially, I'm not a huge fan of Claws of Axos. It's okay, but Colony in Space is the worst story of this season. And the Daemons, I think, is quite a good story, actually. I love Azal. His design is brilliant. But yeah, and Jo Grant, Katie Manning does a fantastic job as Jo. She is the Jon Pertwee companion. I mean, she's who you think of when you think of Jon Pertwee's era. So yeah, Season 8 is great. Season 9 is another mixed bag season. I also put that alongside Season 7 because there's some really good stories in this season, but there's also some real stinkers. Like the stinkers for me are the Mutants and the Time Monster. The Mutants is boring and dull, whereas the Time Monster is boring, but it's funny at the same time. There's a couple of things that make me like Baby Benton, Tom Tit, the weird contraption the Doctor builds with out of cups and saucers and stuff is bizarre. So there's some stuff to keep me engaged, but it's still not the best. But there is some classics, like the Sea Devils is amazing. The sword fight between the Doctor and the Master, brilliant. Curse of Peladon, I actually don't mind. And, you know, the Ice Warriors being good guys is a change. And then you got Day of the Daleks. You know, the updated version they did of it, I enjoyed a lot more. The original version is a bit of a stinker. It almost felt like the Daleks didn't really need to be there. And that's sort of the case with a lot of the Jon Pertwee Dalek stories, if I'm being honest. For a long time, my fiance forgot that there was any Dalek stories in Jon Pertwee's era, and then I had to tell her there's 3 Dalek stories, and they then cameo in Frontier in Space, so you could almost say 3 and a bit, almost 4. So she said it was a shock to her, but yeah. So that's season 9. I'd say it's about average, just above average in B tier. Season 10, for me, is A tier. I know a lot of people would probably put it S tier, but it's not quite there for me. Because there's a story that everyone loves that I actually am not a fan of, and I'm probably going to get a bit of hate for it. So The Three Doctors is brilliant. You know, fantastic. First multi-doctor story. I think they did a fantastic job there, if I'm being perfectly honest. Brilliant. Carnival Monsters, I think it's a really fun story. I love the Drashigs. I think they're brilliant. Then you've got Frontier in Space. It's okay, but a bit like Ambassadors of Death, the Doctor gets captured a lot. And Jo... obviously in Ambassador's Death it was Liz, but this time it's the Doctor and Jo. There's even a couple of lines in this story where they're like, oh, welcome home, or back again, and it's like, yeah, when you've done it again and again and again, it is repetitive. The Ogrons are interesting. Did they need to come back? I don't know. Maybe, I suppose. Then you got Planet of the Daleks. It's an okay Dalek story, but the Daleks trying to use invisibility, really interesting concept, but they do nothing with it. Absolutely nothing with it. It was pointless. And then The Green Death. Jo's final story. Loved the goodbye. Very emotional. Loved that. The story itself, and this is the controversial thing, I actually don't rate The Green Death very high. It's actually wouldn't be very high on my list. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that. But it's just my opinion. I just can't connect with it. I don't know why. I try and I try. I've watched it time and time again. It just doesn't connect with me. Jo's departure does. The story itself doesn't. And I'm sorry. I just can't connect to it. Season 11. Jon Pertwee's final season. This is going to be a bit of a strange one for people. For me, I adore this season and it's S tier. This is hands down my favourite season of Jon Pertwee. There's just something about it. The Doctor and Sarah, because this introduces Sarah Jane Smith. God rest your soul, Elizabeth Sladen. But this introduces Sarah in The Time Warrior, first story for the Sontarans as well. I love that story. I could watch it till the cows come home. It is brilliant. Invasion of the Dinosaurs. When this box set comes out, you need to get those special effects updated. But it's still got that quirky charm to it, and I love it. There's a scene where the Doctor's trapped in like a cabinet or a cleaning closet, and he's like fighting off a pterodactyl with like a broom, and you can clearly see how fake the pterodactyl looks. But it's hilarious, and that's the charm of 70s Who. Then you got Death to the Daleks. Not the best Dalek story, but it's a bit of fun. Got the weird cliffhanger where the Doctor and Bilal just look at the floor, and they're like, "Stop! Don't move!" And then there's just cuts. Then you've got Monster of Peladon, the second in the Peladon Tales. The Ice Warriors are villains again. A little bit of a drag, this one. Didn't need to be a 6-parter, but it's okay. But then you got the epic Planet of the Spiders, where they pull out all the bells and whistles, giving Jon Pertwee everything. He gets to fight, he gets to use all his vehicles. It would have been better if the original plan of having this be a confrontation with the Master, but obviously Roger Delgado had passed away, so that couldn't happen. But it was a suitable finale for Jon Pertwee, and I think he did a brilliant job. Now, we're moving into the Tom Baker era. A little bit of a bias here, because obviously Tom Baker is my favourite Doctor. But that's not going to change how these seasons are ranked. I am doing it generally based on my enjoyment of the stories. So I'm not going to be biased. And there will be some shocking things, even though Tom Baker is my favourite Doctor. But it's of no surprise, season 12 for me is S tier. Anyone who knows me knows I love season 12 because the Doctor, so 4, Sarah and Harry are my favourite TARDIS team of the entire show's history, including Modern Who. So there was no question that season 12 was going to be S tier. And every story in this season, to a degree, is a banger. Robot is a fun unit story on Earth. You could take it straight from the Jon Pertwee era and pop it here. Because apart from Tom Baker being the Doctor instead of John, it is a Jon Pertwee era story. Brilliant. Ark in Space, amazing story. Sontaran Experiment, would like it to be a little bit longer, but it's a fun 2-parter story with the Sontaran. Genesis of the Daleks, need I say more? Say that title and you know Whovians are going crazy. It is a fantastic story. Definitely lives up to its reputation. And then you've got Revenge of the Cybermen. That is also a story. That features the Cybermen. Yeah, okay, it is the worst story of the season. Yes, the Cybermen are very bizarre and weird in it. Do I kind of like it? Yeah, to a degree I kind of do. My fiancée refuses to believe that she's watched it. Hun, you have watched it 3 times. We have watched it together 3 times. Yeah, okay, it's not the best, but yeah. It's bizarre. It's a bizarre story. It is the weakest, I will agree there. But overall, season 12, fantastic season. Season 13 as well. Straight away, S tier. Fantastic season, start to finish. You know, they go into like this gothic horror style in here where you've got like Loch Ness Monster, you've got like Frankenstein, you've got Forbidden Planet references. There's just so much in this season. Terror of the Zygons is brilliant. You say goodbye to Harry. He does come back later in the season for a couple of episodes, but this is his official goodbye. Planet of Evil, probably the weakest. Android Invasion, I quite like. Pyramids of Mars. Ooh, Pyramids of Mars, you're brilliant. I love you. And Sutekh. This is Sutekh at his best. Yes, we've just had Sutekh come back in the modern era, and apparently Sutekh has been around since Pyramids of Mars, which my brain and my fiance's brain, we just refuse to accept that because there's so many circumstances in both classic and modern Who between now and The Legend of Ruby Sunday where Sutekh would not have allowed any of that stuff to happen if he was on board the TARDIS. But yeah, but ignoring that, fantastic story. Brain of Morbius, brilliant story as well. We've also got the Morbiuses, which Chris Chibnall decided to bring back for the Timeless Children. And then Seeds of Doom, absolute classic. Probably my favourite story of that season. It's just fun from start to finish. Season 14, Tom's 3rd season. Again, another absolute banger, going straight into S tier. But I do hold a little bit of a bias to this season just because this season contains the very first ever Doctor Who story I watched, that being The Hand of Fear, Sarah Jane's last story, one of the best companion departures in the show's history, in my opinion. Fantastic story, love Eldrad, so I hold this season dear to me. Does have a couple of duds, like The Mask of Manjagara, even though it's fun, is not the greatest. And The Face of Evil is also a decent story, but not the best. But it's got The Deadly Assassin, which is brilliant. Robots of Death, amazing. And The Talents of Wing Chiang, yes, okay, I get it. It's a very controversial story. Yes, it can be seen as racist. But is it a good story? Yes, it's still a good story, despite all that. So yeah, overall, brilliant season of Doctor Who. Now's where things slip a little bit for Tom. Season 15 goes straight down to B tier. Yeah, I told you, I'm not fully biased with Tom. Season 15 is a lot worse than what came before, unfortunately. But we had Philip Hinchcliffe leave, you know, new people take over, so things were going to change. It does start off strong with Horror of Fang Rock. That is a very, very good story. Like, you could almost say that was from the previous era. You got Invisible Enemy, introduces K9, brilliant. I love K9. But then you got the Image of the Fendal. I don't like that story at all. The Sunmakers, I quite like that one. That's pretty good. But then you got Underworld, which is a piece of absolute... I could say it, but I'm not. But you know what I'm about to say. And then you got Invasion of Time, The Departure of Leela, and K9 Mark 1, which is also a pile of absolute rubbish. There you go. So I'm going to move swiftly on from that. It's a shame that it did drop a bit, but yeah. Now we got season 16, the Key to Time season. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, because I know there's some people who really like the Key to Time, but for me, the Key to Time is down here worthy. Yeah, I told you I'm not biased for Tom just because he's my favourite. Yeah, I hate the Key to Time. Absolutely hate the Key to Time. Apart from Androids of Tara and the Pirate Planet, I don't like any of the other stories. The Ribos Operation, terrible opener. Stones of Blood, actually, I do have a bit of a soft spot for Stones of Blood as well. I'll give that one a pass as well. But The Power of Kroll, god-awful. The Armageddon Factor, travesty. Absolute travesty. Can't stand it. They drag like no tomorrow. Pirate Planet and Androids of Tara are fun, at least. They are fun. You know, Douglas Adams does Pirate Planet. so you know you're in for a good time. But yeah, not a fan of Key to Time. Moving straight swiftly on from that. I might get a bit of hate for that, but remember, this is just my opinion. Season 17, it's tough. I feel like season 17, I don't know, I feel probably about the same as I do for season 15 with season 17, because there's a couple of bangers in this, but there's also a couple of absolute train wrecks in this season as well. For example, City of Death is by far the best story in this season, and probably one of the best Toms ever. Your Destiny of the Daleks, which is okay, bit stupid though at times. Creature from the Pit, do we need to talk about that and what the Doctor does to that creature? If you know, you know. The Horns of Nimon, very weird, but fun though, fun weird. You got a pantomime style villain, and so he keeps you entertained. The Horns of not the Horns of Nimon, the Nightmare of Eden, a story about drugs basically. Very bizarre story, but it's okay. Got the Mandrels, they're a strange design. And then you got Sharda. Yeah, Sharda. We've had so many different versions of Sharda. I've lost track. That story's okay. Not the greatest, but it's okay. So yeah, I'd say B. I could debatably... No, I might put it in C. I might even put it in C, because apart from Horns of Nimon and City of Death, there's none that I really actually say I fully enjoy. Like, enjoy. So I'm going to put it in C. Because I do prefer a couple more stories in season 15. And then Tom's final season. Now, this is also a controversial opinion, because I know a lot of people rip this season a new one because of the fact that Tom is vastly different. The tone is vastly different. You got to remember, we've had, again, another person take over. We had John Nathan Turner take over, and you're entering the 1980s, and also Tom had been in the role for 7 years, so things were going to change. So I actually quite like season 18. It is actually my 4th favourite season of Tom. So for that reason, I'm actually putting it in A tier. That is going to annoy people. I'm sorry, I can't help it. I like season 18. I actually like his costume as well. I do. My fiancée would back me up on that. I adore season 18 Tom's costume. Would I enjoy it more than normal Tom? I don't know. But I adore it. I know people hate it, but I like it. Yes, there's some terrible stories in this season. Yes, the Leisure Hive is garbage. Yes, I know it's garbage, and I will agree with you. It is the worst story of the season, The Leisure Hive. A terrible opener. Terrible for your first 1980s story as well. And this is how you want to introduce the new era. Not best, not a good choice. Meglos is fun, and I will fight anyone on that. Meglos is fun. The Doctor as a Cactus is great. The East-based trilogy, Full Circle is brilliant. State of Decay, great little vampire story there. And Warriors Gate is okay. The concept is okay. That's probably my next least favourite story of the season, Warriors Gate. But you also say goodbye to Romana and K9. But in this season, you do introduce the proper Peter Davison era companions of Adric, Nyssa, and Tegan. Slowly as the season progresses. Like Full Circle introduces Adric, Keeper of Traken, which we'll get onto now, Nyssa, Logopolis, Tegan. Speaking of Keeper of Traken, a brilliant story. I've watched Keeper of Traken. I don't even remember how many times. It's just fun, and you finally get to see you see Geoffrey Beever's master regenerate into Anthony Ainley's master at the end of this, using Nyssa's dad's body of tree mass. Very sad, but they never, apart from after Logopolis, they never use that as a plot point. That should have been a plot point. But then you got Logopolis. I've watched that, wow, ridiculous amounts of times. Yes, it's slow in the middle, but the start and the ending of Logopolis, one of the best regenerations. Not the best regeneration of classic series, but one of the best. And, I mean, some people say Tom deserved better. I think that overall Tom, he had a decent send-off. He had, all his companions and villains, wanting him to die or wanting him to go on, which they do repeat that in Peter Davison's regeneration as well. But I think Tom, he had a good send-off. Moving into Peter Davison then, season 19, for me, I would say season 19 is, about on par with season 18. So I will also put it in A tier, because I quite like it. Castrovalva is a good story. The Visitation is a brilliant story. Black Orchid, I think, is a fun two-parter. Earthshock is the best Cyberman story in Doctor Who history, not just classic series. Earthshock is brilliant. You obviously lose Adric because he gets killed off. There's a couple of duds in this season, like Fort of Doomsday and Time Flight, in particular of Time Flight. And then there's an average story for me of Kinder in here, which introduces the Mara. Great concept. I hate snakes. I really don't like snakes, but you got the Mara. So yeah, overall, pretty good season, I would say. Fairly strong. Season 20, the 20th anniversary. I'm going to get hate for this as well. Because for me, this is where season 20 is going. Yeah, season 20. I am not a fan of season 20. Oh boy. The only stories I like in season 20 is the 5 Doctors and Mordrin Undead. That's about it. Arc of Infinity, not a fan of at all. Snake Dance is worse than Kinder. But Martin Clunes is interesting to have in the story. The Black Guardian trilogy, like I said, Mordrin Undead's good. Got to see the Brigadier again. Introducing Turlo. And you do lose Nyssa then in Terminus, which I think is rubbish. Absolute garbage. And then you got Enlightenment. It's summon on nothing, really. The King's Demons. Pointless story. Stupid. Introduces Chameleon, another companion who they couldn't do anything with because they couldn't get the robot to work. Even though his name is Chameleon, you could have him played by a different actor every single week. I don't understand why you couldn't have Chameleon be a companion. You don't have to use the robot. His name is Chameleon. But anyway, moving on from that. But yeah, the 5 Doctors is brilliant. Is absolutely amazing. So that's the only reason why it doesn't go on the same level as The Key to Time, is because the 5 Doctors is just so good. Love it. Peter Davison's last season. For me, I would say, yeah, it is probably... I'm going to be... Yeah, I love his last season. I can't deny. I can't deny I love Peter's last season. Season 21, absolutely amazing. Yes, you got some duds. Like, you got the Twin Dilemma in here, which is tagged on at the end. It's Colin's first story, which was a stupid mistake, especially since it follows the best Doctor Who story of all time, The Caves of Androzani, which is also the best regeneration story. But, yeah, I don't know. And you got, like, Warriors of the Deep isn't the greatest either, if I'm honest. They are the 2 duds. The start and the end of the season are the duds, and then everything in between is just the golden goo of the best thing ever, because The Awakening is fun, Frontios is really dark and gritty, and I love it. The Tractators are great. I would love to see them come back in Modern Who. Resurrection of the Daleks, ooh, what a great story, and Tegan's departure. And Planet of Fire is fun, and also introduces Perry, and then Turlo leaves as well. And then, like I said, Caves of Androzani is just the best story of Doctor Who ever made, so need I say more? Twin Dilemma was not the best at all. It's fun. There's some good drinking games you can have with the Twin Dilemma. But as me and my fiance found out, I think we did it last year. Yeah, it was entertaining. But yeah, not the best idea, if I'm honest. Moving on, we've got season 22, Colin's first season. People rip Colin Baker and say that he's terrible. I disagree entirely. I think Colin Baker is amazing. Season 22... is A tier for me. I know people might be like, what? It's not that good. Yes, it is. Colin Baker's first season, his proper season, is really good and entertaining. You know, I mean, I can see why people don't like it. Yes, he's totally different to any Doctor before him. But that's the point. The Doctor's supposed to change. And I think the difference is noticeable because you had Peter Davison before him, who was like the most calm Doctor ever. But... yeah, I like it. You know, Attack of the Cybermen is a fun story. The Cryons were an interesting little ad. A Vengeance on Varos, brilliant. Love Syl as a villain. He's great. Mark Lorani is not the best. The Master didn't need to be in that at all. 2 Doctors is a really fun multi-Doctor story. Great to see Fraser Hines and Patrick Troughton back. Time Lash is the dud of the season, and yeah, it's not the best. You know, a story about H.G. Wells could be done well, but but yeah, it wasn't very good. The Borat design's okay though. And then Revelation of the Daleks, I quite like that as a Dalek story. I think it's fun. It's a bit of fun. It's dark, very dark, but I was engaged from start to finish, so I thought it was great. Yeah, and the Doctor and Perry, even though they don't get on, it's kind of interesting to see their relationship, you know? So I don't mind it. Season 23 with Trial of a Time Lord. Yeah, this isn't as good. I would probably say, yeah, this one is probably more, yeah, like C tier worthy of it, really. It's not the best. You know, Mysterious Planet is okay. Mind Warp is very dark, but is okay. Terror of the Vervoids is the best part. I love Terror of the Vervoids. Introduce you to new companion Mel, because Perry has supposedly died in the last one. Introduces you to Mel. I quite like Mel. I don't have anything against Bonnie Langford. And I think seeing her come back in New Who is great, and they're doing a good job with Mel at the moment. And then you got Ultimate Foe, a very rushed ending, if I'm being honest. And Colin Baker deserved a lot better. He was treated so poorly, bless him. And he's a trooper. He goes to every convention and Comic Con, and I've got him to sign both my box sets and even my Power of the Doctor Steelbook. And he's a lovely guy. So, you know, Colin, you deserve better, my friend. And your audios are brilliant. Big Finish. Check out the Sixth Doctor on audio. He's brilliant. Then moving into the last proper Doctor of the classic era, Sylvester McCoy. Season 24, I feel the same with this as I do for like season 15. I know this is controversial as well, especially to put this above a season like season 17, for example. But I have fun. It's a fun, quirky season, people. I like season 24. Paradise Towers is brilliant. Time of the Rani is a lot of fun. Doubt on the Bannerman is a bit of a quirky, fun story. The only story that I actually don't like is actually one that I know people will be annoyed at. I actually don't like Dragonfire. I've actually liked Dragonfire less. The more I've watched it, the less I've liked it. So if I'd stopped watching it after the first two viewings, I would say that Dragonfire was the best of the season. Now I think it's the worst. There's some stupid decisions in this. It's the departure of Mel, the final departure of Glitz, and the introduction of Ace. Ace is a brilliant companion. I love Ace. She's terrific. Season 25, which came out recently on the collection range, is an S tier. I adore Season 25. It is my favourite of the McCoy era. And I just think it's solid from start to finish. There's not a bad story in this season. The worst story in this season, for me, is Silver Nemesis. But that's just because it's so cluttered with stuff. If you took out one element, it would feel less cluttered. You didn't need the Cybermen, the Nazis, and Lady Painfort. I would say take out the Nazis part. Because we still want a Cyberman story. So just have the Cybermen versus Lady Painfort. That would be an interesting one. You got Happiness Patrol. I love the Candyman. He's so fun. Remembrance of the Daleks, one of the best Dalek stories besides Genesis. And then Greatest Show in the Galaxy is really, really fun and entertaining. I mean, I hate clowns, but I couldn't deny it was brilliant. And the Doctor and Ace's relationship in this season is starting to grow really strong. But then you got the final season then of Classic Who, season 26. This is then A tier. It's the in the middle season for me of Sylvester McCoy. I know it'd be a lot of people's favourites, but for me it's not quite there. Because obviously the Doctor then flips. So in season 24 he's really goofy and quirky. In season 26 he's very dark and manipulative. And in season 25 he's a little bit of both. I like the little bit of both. I don't like if he's just one or the other. I think he needs that middle ground because that's what the Doctor's all about. If he's too one way, then he's not Doctor enough. But if he's too the other way, he's teetering onto Master territory. And that's sort of what it feels like. And I don't like that. But there's some good stories in this. Curse of Fenric is a brilliant story. Really shows you what I mean by very Master-like. And Survival, the last story of the classic series, the proper classic series, is a fantastic story. The Master was a bit wasted. Sorry, Anthony Ainley. Your last appearance as the Master on screen here wasn't done very, very well, if I'm honest. But yeah, it was overall, but then you got stories like Ghostlight and Battlefield, which Battlefield is the final story for the Brigadier meeting the Doctor. And I'm not a big fan of that at all. It wasn't done very well. He was supposed to be killed off there. That might have made it a little bit better, but there was nothing really to grab you. But yeah, so that's season 26. And then finally, we've got, I put it as The Wilderness Years, but it's just the TV movie. Where would I rank the TV movie? I'd say, yeah, I'd say probably about C tier. The TV movies, it's all right. It's not any masterpiece of cinema, but you know, it is what it is. You know, you have Sester McCoy to start the first 15, nearly 20 minutes of it, and then Paul McGann for the rest. Paul McGann does a good job, but it's very obviously Americanized. It's very different. They were trying to go for a new audience and drag new people in, and try to still keep it true to formula, but I don't know, it didn't quite work. But it was an alright, it was a fun movie. You can have a good time watching it. That's why I say C tier, because you can have fun. And I do have fun. And I love the TARDIS design, by the way. The TARDIS looks great. You know, it's very different to anything we've had before. It looks very, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I'm looking at you, Eric Roberts, as the master. Yeah, but that is it. That is my ranking of classic Doctor Who seasons. As you can see, I am a massive fan of Classic Who. That's why a lot of them are in the high tiers. There's not many that's low. Key to Time is my least favourite of Classic Who. But yeah, that is my list. I hope you did enjoy this longer video for the new year. Please like it by giving it a thumbs up. Comment down below, what are your thoughts on my list? What would your list be? What are your favourite seasons of classic Doctor Who? And subscribe if you are new, because I've got plenty of new content coming now in 2025. But remember, this is only part 1. I will be doing part 2. I'll keep you updated as to when that'll come out. And that will be on the modern era of the show, so doing Christopher Eccleston to Ncuti Gatwa. I'll try to do that before season 2 comes out. But yeah, for now, this is Nerdy Grail signing off. I hope you all have an amazing day and a great start to the new year, and I will see you all next time. Bye for now, guys.